my people, how are you doing? Hope you're having a damn good day. Welcome back to the channel, and today we will be talking about Roberto Martinez's Portugal side, his set of tactics. Of course, they have used four different formations, I should say, in his short stint whilst being the Portuguese manager. So, we're going to go over the 4-3-3 formation, the 4-2-3-1 formation, the 3-1-4-2 formation, and of course, it's a lot. And of course, finally, we will go over the 3-4-2-1 formation as well. Now, all those sets of tactics, everything, are going to be in this video. And I don't know. Here's a question for you. You can let me know down below. Are Portugal a better team with Cristiano Ronaldo in it? Of course, off the back of a 9-0 win without the superstar himself, 38-year-old superstar. I will let you know my opinion at the end of this video. So if you do stick around, you will know it. If you don't, well, that's up to you. But we will get on into this one. First up, off the bat, we've got the 4-2-3-1 formation. This is the formation that they used last night in the massive landslide victory against Luxembourg. Ronaldo did not start, but I've gone with him up top here. Of course, it was Gonzalo Ramos with the brace. So he did start, but we'll go with Ronaldo, Jota just in behind, Rafael Leao, Silva, Cancelo, Diaz, Fernandes, Pereira, Inacio, and Mendes. And then, of course, in goal, we've got Diogo Costa. On the bench, in the substitutes department, we've got Ramos, Felix, Otavio, Palhinha, Patricio, Dallo, Pepe. Then in the reserves, we've got some good players here. Guerrero, Vitinha, João Mario, Nunez, and Sarr. So, of course, compared to what the actual squad is in IRL, it's different. But, more or less, the mainstay players are in this team going forward. So as you can see here, for the formation, we have gone with the 4-2-3-1 narrow, with two wingers being in place and not two wide attacking midfielders. So it looks something like this: one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, two DMs, one cam, two wingers, and one striker. For Roberto Martinez's instructions going forward with this formation specifically, they do slightly change, but the principles do remain the same. Keep that in mind when we're talking about it going forward. But there is a press on the heavy touch, so they would wait for the opposition to make their mistake in the back line. They would also look to sometimes press them. You can do that with the D-pad and left. So you will look to try and press, be very aggressive. With Ronaldo in the team, I don't think they would have played the exact same style. I mean, Gonzalo Ramos, João Felix, of course, they are very energetic. So I would more or less lean to the press after loss of possession. It's more energetic, it's more physical on the team itself, but it does get the job done more effectively. And we saw Luxembourg at times, they were very much caught out more times than not. The pace of Rafael Leao, closing down the angles, the wittiness of the likes of Bernardo Silva, just being able to intercept those stray passes. So they were very good. But with the likes of Ronaldo, I've gone with a pressure on heavy touch. It does more or less take off the stress of the press from the 38-year-old himself. So that's why I've gone with that. As for the width, it's set to 40, so it's a nice compact system at times. It can slightly be stretched, allowing for the opponent to pass through the phases of the field and get the ball high up. But in saying that, it does also allow for your midfield to try and intercept those passes, cut out those passing lanes, making sure that they're breaking down the opposition's offense going forward, and then hitting the quick counter-attack, springing balls to the likes of Rafael Leao, to the likes of your fullbacks, who will look to bomb on a lot higher up the field as well. And speaking of a lot higher up the field, the depth is set to 85, could even push up to 90. I've gone with 85 though. Against Luxembourg, it was the likes of Danilo, Inacio, and I think it was Ruben Diaz, yes. They were literally almost in like the final third, just compacting and pressing and squeezing the likes of, or the life out of Luxembourg and what they had to offer. So very, very high line with this formation. As for the build-up play, now we did see a lot of long balls. I think Roberto Martinez, he wanted those balls played into the front line as quick as possible to try and spring some quick passing movements going forward. The likes of Rafael Leao, like I've mentioned before, very quick, so the ball over the top to him was very nice at times. But they also do have this fast-paced build-up that they can quickly phase into action. So that's why I've gone with a very balanced approach. They can also look to slow things down. The likes of Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes getting on the ball, having a few touches in the midfield, waiting for the opposition to open up and make space for them for those nice passes that they did feed in. I mean, Bruno Fernandes, by the way, three assists, 1 goal, fantastic, absolutely amazing. I think, to be honest, this position for him in this exact formation, that's what we play with at Manchester United. Maybe he could partner Casemiro in the midfield, who knows. Anyway, point being is, for the build-up play for Portugal, we have got it set to a balanced approach, so you can have those long balls, you can have the fast-paced build-up, you can look to slow things down. It does offer a very dynamic approach to what Portugal have to offer. As for the chance creation, it is set to forward run, so you want your forwards running on in behind, stretching that defense at times, making sure that they are exposing them, keeping them on their toes, making sure that they're keeping them very, very honest. You do have fast-paced players in this team. I mean, even the likes of Ronaldo does still have a good few yards of pace in him, so this does work out very, very well going forward. And then, as for the width, it's set to 70. You do want your fullbacks bombing on, getting high and wide up the field. You want the likes of Bernardo Silva working in that wide right space with loads of space around him. So a nice stretch midfield, a nice stretch backline. It does tend to create a load of space in the opposition's defense for your runners to be able to exploit those spaces and get the ball in the back of the net, most importantly. Now, as for players in the box, I've set it to 7. The likes of Ronaldo or Gonzalo Ramos, they need a load of help. They need a load of players around them to detract the opposition from just focusing in on them. And that's how you can do it with 7 or 4 players in and around the box, making sure that they're in those attacking areas, waiting to, more or less get the ball in the back of the net. And then finally, corners and free kicks are both set to 4. So, starting off with the instructions for Diogo Costa, he's set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper with majority of these lineups. Diogo Costa, he's going to have the same set of instructions. They will be playing a very high line, so it makes the most sense. You do need a goalkeeper with the ability to play out from the back, with the ability to pick out some great passes. I mean, Diogo Costa against Luxembourg, he was very calm, very collected with the ball, made a good save here and there, and that's more or less why he's been phased into the team, and the likes of Rui Patricio has been phased out. Even though Rui Patricio can play with the ball at his feet, he's not as good with it, whereas the likes of Diogo Costa, he is fantastic with the ball at his feet. And of course, comfort crosses makes the most sense. You want him to alleviate the stress, the pressure on the back line, getting those big booming balls fired into the box. You want your goalkeeper to be very physical in the air, claiming them and then circulating it out to either your fullbacks. He does look to pass it out to the likes of Dallo or Mendes or whoever's the fullback on the day. He'll look to mainly spray those passes out to them and then have them move up the field a lot more. So he does more or less be the fire starter in a way of the team's offense going forward. As for Diaz and Inacio, they're set to the same set of instructions, and that's the base set of instructions if you didn't know. As for Cancelo, he is set to overlap and join the attack and stick to position. So like I say, you want your fullbacks getting high and wide, making those overlapping runs, sometimes inverting into the midfield, joining up with them, but that is for other players, more specifically the left back position in this case. But yes, as for Cancelo, he is set to join the attack and overlap. As for Mendes, he is set to join the attack and invert. Now, I did say that sometimes Roberto Martinez does want his fullbacks to join up with the midfield, and maybe it was because it was Diego Dallo, and who's a right-footed player, a right back playing in the left back position, but I did see him more times than not inverting a bit more, with Rafael Leao holding the width on the left-hand side and Cancelo holding the width on the right-hand side. But I do think with the likes of Mendes, he will have a similar role. Sometimes maybe he will have a bit of a mixed approach, you could say, join the attack and have a run type of a mixed approach. So sometimes he will look to make those overlapping runs. He is very fast, can hold the width on the left-hand side very effectively and efficiently, might I say. But for the sake of it, and from what I saw last night, Diego Dallo, or Mendes in this case, he is set to join the attack and invert and, of course, stick to position. Now, moving on into the midfield, we have got Pereira. He is set to cut past lanes and drop between the defence. More times than not, there was a back three system, and Pereira was very much involved in that back three system, but he was a midfielder. It wasn't that Roberto Martinez was playing a back three. It was just the instructions, you could say, that Pereira was told: when the fullbacks bomb on forward, I need you dropping down, dropping deep, collecting, or creating, I should say, a back three or a back line of 3 players, and that was Inacio, Pereira, and Diaz. And then finally, he is set to cover the centre as well. Then Bruno Fernandes, the player of the game in the 9-0 win, got 3 assists, 1 goal by the way. And yes, I am ripping my boy because I love him too much. But he is set to cut passing lanes, get forward. So he will not only just look to stay back, look to help the likes of Pereira, but he will look to advance forward, help the likes of Jota, link up with the likes of Bernardo Silva as well. And then normal interceptions are set to be on form. He wasn't doing too much, and I think that's the key for Bruno Fernandes. Just don't overextend yourself, and you'll have a very good game nonetheless. He is also said to be the deep line playmaker. His through balls, his over-the-top balls, his long-range passing was immaculate, and maybe it is because Luxembourg allowed him a lot of time and space on the ball, but nonetheless, his ability to find those long-range passes, hit the runners, like I say, the forward lines, they will look to try and advance in behind the defensive back line at times, exploiting the space. And Bruno Fernandes, if you do have the ball with him in the deeper situations, you can look to spring that long ball over the top. And then finally cover the wing, so he will look to sometimes fill in for Cancelo if Cancelo does advance on too far forward. And then we've got Diogo Jota. He had a very mixed role. I didn't actually know his exact position, because at first I thought maybe Portugal were playing a 4-3-3, and maybe he was just on the left-hand side, which didn't make sense to me. But him playing just as the second striker or the number 10 in certain situations, it made a load of sense. So he is said to have a basic defensive support, so sometimes he'll look to drop a little bit deeper, which is why I was a bit fuzzy with his positioning sense. But sometimes he will look to drop a bit deeper, other times he'll look to hang back, high up the field, wait for the quick pass from a Bruno or Cancelo or somebody just to hit him with the pass, and then turn and drive on and try and support the likes of your other forwards. He is set to get in the box. He's very, very good. Very sneakily good at scoring headers, by the way. And then drift wide. So more times than not, he was on the left-hand side, creating overloads for the likes of Rafael Leao as well as Diogo Dalot. In this case, it would be Mendes. Just with his innate ability to have that left-hand side for Liverpool locked down. So he was very much on that left-hand side, making sure the little 1-2 passes, linking up play very nicely with the front guys in that situation. And then normal interceptions are set to be on. And then moving out left, we have got the likes of Rafael Leao. He's set to come back on defense, so he will look to help the likes of Mendes at times. Stay wide, like I say, he will look to hug the touchline and create those 1v1 situations that you want a player like a Rafael Leao to get in, and then try and dominate his opponents, go left, go right, cross the ball. And he did get a great assist. I think it was for Diogo Jota. I can't remember, there's so many goals. But it was for somebody where he like fizzed it back and then they just fired it home for the fifth goal or the sixth goal. I can't even remember, to be honest. So you do want him in those wider areas, working his best, working his magic at times, attacking the opposition's fullback. Getting him behind is very important. He's got loads of pace, loads of power to try and challenge that back line, try and challenge the opposition's fullback at times, beating them more times than not. And then get into the box, you do want him in and around that attacking area as well. And then we have got Bernardo Silva on the other flank. He is set to have a comeback on defense approach, so he will to also help the likes of Cancelo as well. Have a balanced width, so he won't always look to hang wide or just come inside. But I will say his best work is done inside, linking up play with the likes of Jota and Bruno, coming short at times, which is what I've set him to. So you do want him as a more interior forward at times, allowing for more space for Cancelo to overlap and run into. And then, of course, you do want him in the box. And then finally, we've got our striker, or it was Gonzalo Ramos. I'm using Ronaldo because he is the GOAT, in my opinion. But he is set to stay central, have a mixed attack, so you do want him to sometimes drop slightly off, or you do want him to challenge that backline as well, making those runs on in behind. Sometimes even being a target man, it does work quite well for Cristiano. Have a normal set of interception skills, and then stay forward. So he won't look to drop deep. That is what Diogo Jota will look to do, get on the ball and then pass the ball to Cristiano Ronaldo. It is a very different set of tactics for Ronaldo, because he does like to drop deep, sometimes get on the ball, link up play quite nicely, drift slightly wider at times. But for this formation and this set of tactics, I've got him set to stay forward. Next up, we have got the 4-3-3 formation. We've got Leao, Ronaldo, Silva, Vitinha, Palhinha, Fernandes, Cancelo, Inacio, Diaz, Dalot, and Costa. I'm not going to go through the bench and the reserves every time, but that is the starting 11 we've gone with. As you can see, for the formation, it is just a 4-3-3 holding, 1 goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 1 DM, 2 central midfielders, 1 striker, and then, of course, 2 wingers. For this set of tactics, it's very, very similar to what we saw with the 4-2-3-1, where it's pressure on heavy touch because you are playing with Cristiano Ronaldo up front. But if you are playing with a more pacey forward, a forward that's obviously younger, not as long in the tooth as our boy CR7, I'll probably go with the press after loss of possession. But for the sake of it, I'm going with the pressure on heavy touch. So you're going to wait for the opposition to make the mistake, and then you're going to pounce. But very much just like the 4-2-3-1, it's set to 40 the width, and the depth is set to 85. A nice high line, pressing, compacting the opposition in their own half at times, squeezing the life out of them, making sure that their life is just miserable. As for the offense, it's also set to balanced. Like I say, you want those long balls being played into the forward line. You want your runners making runs in behind. You also want to potentially have the game slow down a little bit. I know with the likes of Ronaldo, you do want him to get on the ball a bit more and not have him overworked and outpaced at times. So as for chance creation, it is set to a balanced approach. You don't just want your forwards to make those runs in behind. You don't want it just to be direct either. You can have a nice slow-paced possession game, or you can have the forwards sprinting on and behind, playing those long balls to the likes of Rafael Leao or Bernardo Silva or even a Cristiano Ronaldo running in behind at times. As for the width, it's slightly more narrow, but it's still set to a nice width of 65. So, like I said, the first one was set to 70. This one's set to, like I said, a little bit less, 65. You do want your fullback still bombing on, getting on high up the field. You want your midfield nice and spread out quite wide for them to be able to have time and space on the ball, to be able to find those attractive passes that we know that the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, Vitinha at times, although he is more of a quick phase 1-2-3 pass in the midfield, quick passing, short 5-yard passes at times. But you do want your players who have that ability to find those long-ranging passes. You do want them to have a load of time on the ball, and having a width of 65 does do that indeed. As for players in the box, it is again still set to 7. You want the likes of Ronaldo having a nice supporting cast in the attacking areas. And then finally, corners and free kicks are set to 4. So as for the instructions going forward, Diogo Costa is set to the same set of instructions: come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. With the high line, it goes without saying you do need a keeper who's quite capable to run off with his line. And then as for Inacio and Diaz, they are set to their same set of instructions, with it being set to the basic set of instructions as well. For Cancelo, he is set to have a balanced attack and invert, so inverting into the midfield, joining up with them at times, linking up play with the likes of Bruno Fernandes, sometimes making those advancing runs up the field, but more times than not, he will almost act as a fourth midfielder, if you would like. As for Diogo Dalot, he's set to join the attack and overlap, so he will be providing a load of width down this right-hand side. I think with the likes of Bernardo Silva as the right winger, the right fullback will always look to try and advance on, be the width in the team, allowing for Bernardo Silva to be at his best, come inside a bit more, link up play with the midfield at times. And then we have got Palhinha in the midfield, a new face. He is set to be the destroyer in the team, breaking up the opponent's play, breaking up their good offensive movements, trying to be the thorn in their side at times. So for that, I've gone with the instructions of cut passing lanes, drop between the defense, also creating that back three at times. Normal interceptions will be on, although you can have them set to be aggressive, although sometimes it does just drain their stamina too much. Stick to position and then cover the center. Like I say, you want him dropping into that back three, that back two, creating a back three, and allowing him to be the thorn in the opposition's side. Moving slightly higher up the field, we've got Bruno Fernandes. He's set to have a balanced attack, a balanced crossing run. Normal interceptions are set to be on, and then the free roam. So it's very much a box-to-box role for Bruno in this situation. You won't just look for him to be the defensive outlet. You will look to get him on the ball as much as possible. Like I say, hitting those forwards who are making those advancing runs. You do want the team to succeed with the likes of Bruno Fernandes in it. And I think he's a very, very important player for this team going forward. You don't just want him to get forward, though, because it does, and it will leave the team very, very exposed if you have too many guys getting forward at times. It will leave a big hole in the middle of the park, and it can then leave your defensive backline very, very exposed. So that's why I've gone with very balanced approach for the Bruno Fernandes role. And then we've got Vitinha on the other side. He's set to have a balanced attack, stay on the edge of the box. Normal interceptions are set to be on, cover the wing, and then drift wide. So him and Bernardo Silva will look to somewhat interchange positions at times, link up play quite nicely. Bernardo Silva will look to drop into that midfield in certain moments, and that's why Vitinha being set to wide does work quite well. And then speaking of Bernardo Silva, if it allows me to get there, he's set to come back on defense, free roam, come short, get into the box. So like I say, you do want Bernardo Silva to drop into that midfield, almost creating a midfield 5 if you include the likes of Cancelo also being in there, and it does create a nice overload in the midfield, allowing for the likes of Diogo Dalot to make overlapping runs into that wide right space, with Silva and Vitinha more or less operating in the wide right space as well, but at the same time they will also look to operate more centrally, given the instructions that they do have. And then we have got Rafael Leao. He's set to come back on defense, stay wide, getting behind, and then get into the box. Very similar to the role he had with the 4-2-3-1, where he will look to take on opponents, stay wide, hug the touchline, go left, go right, whip the crosses in, or potentially whip in shots. And then we have got the big man himself, Cristiano Ronaldo. He is set to have a balanced width, so he will look to sometimes make arcing runs in and out of the box, but mainly stay central. You've got a good supply line, you've got great creators all the way around him. He doesn't need to do too much, to be honest. And that's why I've gone with those set of instructions. And then as for the attacking runs, again, you don't want him just to have one thing nailed down. You don't just want him making runs behind, because it does, it takes away the realistic aspect that Cristiano Ronaldo does provide for the team. And 2, you do need him to sometimes be a target man. Of course, the likes of Rafael Leao is the second tallest man in the front line, or the outfield players, you could say, minus the 2 centre backs. So you do need Ronaldo in that box being the physical aerially strong, superior being. And that's why I've gone with a mixed attack, because you do want him to make the runs behind, you do want him to sometimes drop off and link up play, but you do want him as well to be a target man. As for interceptions, I've set it to normal. Because of Ronaldo, you don't want to overwork, overpace him. You do want him to maintain that stamina as much as possible. And then come back on defense. Like I say, you do want him to drop off quite deep, pulling out opponents, potentially pulling out the centre-backs, having them follow him into the midfield, drawing out space, allowing for the likes of Leao or Silva to work into that space and have that long ball hit into them in a more central channel, and then allow them to work their magic and potentially score goals. Or you want Ronaldo to drop deep, link up play with the likes of your midfield, and then advance the ball on and then make those late runs into the box as well. So we're just about halfway, and I would like to say, guys, thank you so much for the support and everything. If you are enjoying this video, please hit the like button. It will let me know if I need to do more international sets of tactics. If this video does badly, I will scrap it and we will never talk about this ever again. But if this video does do well, and that I can judge that by the like button, then please feel free, hit the like button, subscribe if you are new. That would be absolutely fantastic. But we are going to talk about the 3-4-2-1 formation right now. Again, you've got Ronaldo, Leao, Silva, Palhinha, Fernandes, Guerrero, Cancelo, Inacio Diaz, and now Pepe in the team, and then of course Diogo Costa, and then on the bench, as you can see there, we've got Joao Felix and so on, ready to come on, step up, step in to the team. And then as you can see for here, we have gone with one goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, 2 wide midfielders, 2 central midfielders, 2 centre forwards, and then 1 striker. It's a basic 3-4-2-1 formation. Yet again, the principles remain the same: pressure on heavy touch, or alternatively, you can go with press after loss of possession, depending on who your central most furthest forward is. And that is Cristiano Ronaldo, which is why I've gone with the pressure on heavy touch. As for the width, though, it's slightly more wider, a bit more balanced. You can say it is a very widespread team, so that's why I've gone with a width of 50. It does allow you to more or less have a bit more of a zonal approach, having those 3 centre-backs, out-and-out centre-backs especially, have them dominate the aerial balls that get whipped into the box, and allowing for your players to be slightly more widespread, allowing them to cut those passing lanes out, intercept the ball, and then move the ball back higher up the field. As for the depth, it's set to 75, which is a little bit lower than the previous sets of tactics that we've done, but it does allow for a bit more defensive solidarity, a bit more pragmatism, you could say, with just making sure that the midfield and the defense are not that widely spread apart, as well as there's not that much of a gap between the goalkeeper and the 3 defenders, I should say, who could potentially be exposed more times than not. You don't have the fastest defense. You've got the likes of Pepe and Diaz in there, and maybe Inacio can be a little bit quicker, but you don't want to have that. You don't want to put that up for chance. That's what I'm going to say. So as for the offense, the builder player set to balance, the principles remain the same. You do want to have the likes of that long ball played out from the back into your forward line. You do want the likes of being able to speed up or slow down the pace of play. So that's why we've gone with the balanced approach. It is a very dynamic team, to be fair, and they can all adapt to the system at hand. And then as for chance creation, I've set it to forward runs. Now we do have Ronaldo in the front line, so what his instructions do tend to do is he tends to drop off and allow the likes of Leao and Bernardo Silva, and sometimes even a Bruno Fernandes, as well as your wide midfielders, your fullbacks essentially. They like to get on in behind, challenge the offense, or challenge the opposition's defense with the offensive approach that they have. And they are quite pacey at times, so it does look to tend to exploit the opposition more times than not. As for the width, it's set to 60, slightly more narrow. Again, it is a very, very wide spread out team, so you don't need to have them too wide spread out. You can have them drop slightly more in, creating more opportunities for passes. You want the likes of Bernardo Silva, Leao, Bruno Fernandes, Palhinha at times, or whoever you have in those positions. You do want them more narrow, being able to interchange passes in and around that area, little 5-yard passes here and there, and that does tend to work out quite well. As for players in the box, again, it is set to 7. You want your supporting cast of Ronaldo in and around him. I sound like a little bit of a broken tape recorder at times, but like I say, the principles of these sets of tactics do stay the same, so you do want him to have a bit more of a supporting cast. If those crosses aren't fired in directly to him, could be fired into the likes of a Rafael Leao, or a Bernardo Silva, or Bruno Fernandes, or even potentially your opposite fullback at times. And then finally, corners and free kicks are set to 4. So with the likes of Diogo Costa, he is set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper, especially in this situation where your defense can be heavily and hyperly exposed at times. You do want him to be able to claim the ball, run off of his line very quickly, and then circulate it back into your team's possession. And of course, come for crosses, it goes without saying, in FIFA 23, you do need this for your goalkeepers to be able to claim those aerial balls and then throw them back out, or potentially kick them high up the field for those quick counter-attacks to be sprung on the opposition. As for your three defenders, Pepe, Diaz, and Inacio, they are set to the same set of instructions, their base set of instructions. You don't want to mess with them too much. You don't want them out of position, messing around or being too aggressive and therefore creating gaps in the back line. You want them to just be a sturdy back three, keeping in line, creating those offside opportunities, as well as winning the ball back aerially as well. Maybe I have said as well a lot, but I'm sorry, I've got a lot of instructions that I'm getting through here. And then we'll start off with the midfield duo. We'll start off with Palhinha. He's set to stay back while attacking, stay on the edge of the box. Aggressive interceptions will be set on, so he will be the driving force in terms of the defensive aggressiveness in front of that backline so that they won't have to be. And then cover the center and stick to position. Like I say, he's going to be that shield in front of those back three players. And then we've got Bruno Fernandes, the box-to-box player, the man that's going to link up play, stitch up everything nicely with the likes of Bernardo Silva at times. He's set to have a balanced attack, so he will look to get forward at times. He will look to hang back in certain moments, help the likes of Palhinha out. Stay on the edge of the box, it goes without saying. Bruno Fernandes, he is very effective with whipping those diagonal balls into the box, potentially making runs on the edge of the box, whipping those crosses in for your forward line. Normal interceptions are set to be on for him. And then free roam, allowing him to show up in little pockets of space in and around, waiting for those little passes, linking up play quite nicely with the players around him, of course. And then out wide, we've got Rafael Guerreiro and Cancelo. They are set to the same set of instructions, just so you know. Come back on defense, stay wide, get in behind, and then get into the box. You do want them creating the width in the team. They are the widest players possible, and they do tend to do this job very, very well. Their crossing ability as well is very, very good. And that's why we've gone with these players over the likes of Nuno Mendes and Diogo Dalot. And then we've got Bernardo Silva and Leao. They are the centre forwards. They both have slightly differing roles, if I'm going to be honest with you. We've got Bernardo Silva here set to have a drift wide approach for his supporting runs, drifting wide into that wide right area. It's very much a Bernardo Silva thing to do. Attacking runs is set to mix, so he will look to sometimes get in behind, sometimes come short link-up play with Bruno, add another body into that midfield at times. Normal interceptions are set to be on, and then come back on defense. Like I say, linking up play with Bruno, being more involved in the ball of play at times. It does scream Bernardo Silva. We've got Rafael Leao. He's set to have a balance width, so he will look to sometimes drift out wider. He will sometimes look to stay a bit more central for those long balls. If Ronaldo drops off, Leao will be that central focus point going forward, making those runs in behind more times than not. And speaking of runs in behind, getting in behind is essential to getting the best out of the likes of Rafael Leao. Normal interceptions are set to be on, and then basic defensive support. So sometimes, if Bernardo Silva does drop off, which he does tend to do, the likes of Rafael Leao will look to more or less hang back, hang up the field a bit more, look to try and support Ronaldo, make runs off of Ronaldo at times. And then finally, we've got Cristiano Ronaldo, who is set to have a central or stay central role. So those runs that he makes, he will only look to make them down the middle at times. Getting him behind is essential. This can be Gonzalo Ramos at times, but we've gone with Ronaldo, so getting him behind is very, very pivotal. Of course, you don't have the most amount of forwards. You have 3 of them, so you need to try and maximize and stretch that backline as much as possible, which is why I've gone with Cristiano Ronaldo in this case to have the get in behind approach. Normal interceptions are set to be on, and then come back on defense. You do want him to sometimes drop deeper, link up play as well with the likes of Bernardo Silva at times, and that's why I say the likes of Rafael Leao moving into that central striker role, it does work out very, very nicely. And finally, we've got the final formation. I hope you guys are still watching, to be fair. We've got the 3-1-4-2 formation. We've got Joao Felix up front with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, Cancelo, Silva, Palhinha, Fernandes, Guerreiro, Inacio, Diaz, and Danilo Pereira. And then we have got Diogo Costa starting in goal. We've got Leao on the bench with Jota this time, Otavio Mendes, Patricio, Dalot, and Pepe. As for the formation, you can see here we've got 1 goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, 1 DM, 2 central midfielders, 2 wide midfielders, and then 2 strikers. And again, we have got the same set of tactics, you could say, pressure and heavy touch, or potentially press after possession loss. We've got the width set back to 40. It's now been narrowed slightly more. With this formation, you don't look to try and open up too many gaps between the players. You look to try and manipulate the opposition, try and funnel them out wide, have those balls whipped in a bit more. And then as for the depth, it's slightly lower again because you are playing a back 3, but it is set to 70. You could say it's a mid-block at this point. with your back three sets in place. As for the offense, the builder player said to have a balanced approach. Like I said, for the previous three sets of tactics, you do want the dynamic approach, the ability to hit those long balls and the ability to speed up or slow down the gameplay. So you do want that more times than not. As for the chance creation, though, it's slightly different. You want more of a possession-based game. You don't want the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Joao Felix making those runs in behind. They're not the quickest players as it stands. So this is more of a possession-based system that Roberto Martinez will look to try and implement as well, because you do have an out-and-out midfield three on this occasion for this team. It's a more natural midfield three with the likes of Palhinha, Bernardo Silva and Bruno Fernandes all taking up those central areas. So they will have more of a grip on the game, you could say, and you're not just storing Bernardo Silva out wide at times. As for the width, it's set to 65. Your wing backs or your wide midfielders in this case, they will look to create the width down those wide flank areas, as well as Bernardo Silva and Bruno Fernandes, nice wide in the midfield, creating and generating space for themselves and being able to hit those balls into the likes of Joao Felix or Cristiano Ronaldo. I know you said Bernardo Silva, but Cristiano Ronaldo. Plays in the box, as per always, set to 7, and then corners and free kicks as well are set to 4. So for the last set of instructions, we've got Diogo Costa in goal. He's set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. It goes without saying, I've explained it tenfold now, but you know why he is set to these sets of instructions. As for your 3 defenders, you've got Inacio and Diaz. They're set to their base set of instructions, whereas Pereira, he's set to join the attack and step up, sometimes joining up with the likes of Palhinha, almost creating that box formation at times. But it's crazy because you will more times than not have 2 defenders. So just be a bit more wary when you are playing with this formation, that it can be hyperly exposed at times from the opposition's offense. And then we've got Palhinha protecting the back line at times. He is set to cut past lanes, step back while attacking. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on, cover the center. So again, very similar role to the previous instructions that he did have in the previous formation, where he will look to shield the backline and be very aggressive in front of that backline at times. And then we have got Bernardo Silva. He is set to have a balanced attack, stay on the edge of the box. Normal interceptions are set to be on, cover the wing, and then drift wide. So he will look to do a lot of his playmaking on that wide right area, linking up play quite nicely with Cancelo and Ronaldo at times, as well as trying to stitch play between the midfield and the offense. We have got Bruno Fernandes. He's set to have a balanced attack, stay on the edge of the box. Normal interceptions are set to be on, cover the wing, and then free roam. So he will look to have a very similar role to his previous sets of instructions, where he will look to find those little pockets of space with the likes of Bernardo Silva and try and operate, stitching the play between the midfield and the offense. Moving out wide though, we have got Guerrero and Cancelo. They are set to the same set of instructions as well. That very wing-back-esque approach. Come back on defense, stay wide, get in behind, get into the box for the crosses. You do want them being able to whip those balls in, but you also want the opposite side's wide midfielder to also be able to get into the box for the potential back post tap-ins. And then moving slightly higher up the field, or let me just show you Cancelo, he is set to the same set of instructions as well. But moving slightly on higher up the field, we've got Joao Felix. He is set to drift wide, getting behind. Aggressive interceptions are set to be on, and then come back on defense. So he will look to drop slightly more deeper, slightly off of Ronaldo, playing slightly in behind him at times, playing as a centre forward, you could say. You do want to making those angled runs in and out of the box, creating more space for Ronaldo, drawing more players away from him at times. Getting him behind does make sense, stretching the opposition's defense on a vertical scale, and then aggressive interceptions. Joao Felix will be looking to do a lot of the forward work for the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. That's more or less what I gained from Roberto Martinez's set of instructions for him when watching the system being played. The likes of Ronaldo, you do want to try and preserve him as much, and a lot of the dirty work, you could say, it does fall onto the player that's playing next to him at times. So that's why he is set to have all these crazy sets of instructions on, because he will be working the hardest on the field at times. And then finally, Cristiano Ronaldo, he's set to stay central for his support runs. You won't look to drift wide. He'll look to just be in the box, wait for those headers or those crosses to come in for the headers. His attacking runs are set to be mixed, so he will look to sometimes make those runs in behind, but more times than not, you do want him to somewhat just be a target man, linking up play quite nicely at times. He does have a very, very strong supporting cast, especially with this formation and these players around him who can carry the ball over 10, 12, 20 yards at times. So you do want him to almost be just the guy who taps it home more times than not. As for interceptions, it's set to normal, and then as for defensive support, it is set to basic defensive support, or alternatively, you can go with the stay forward approach, where he will look to just hang back, wait for the ball to come to him, not do too much defensive work, and like I say, you want to try and preserve his stamina, his pace, and all that good stuff going forward. So yes, my people, that was an absolute mouthful. I have gone through 4 different formations for Portugal. If you have enjoyed this video, please do me the biggest favor, hit the thumbs up button, and to let me know that this is like a good video idea, and if you would like more, that would also let me know as well. So potentially, if this video does well, we could do more international sets of tactics and so on going forward. But most importantly, my dudes, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.